Appearing on the official Genshin manga and Teyvat chapter storyline preview as Sumeru's first ever character to be shown in public, the Judicator of Secret, Cyno, has now arrived in the game. With the long await finally coming to an end, this video will tackle all the information on Cyno in his current state in Genshin Impact. Regardless of the information presented, if you enjoy a character for reasons like their voice actor, aesthetic, or personality, these videos are by no means meant to stop you from spending your premium gems on what brings you fun and happiness. Instead, consider this video as a sort of preparation for what you'll be getting into if you did spend your premium gems, detailing the obstacles one must overcome to use Cyno to his fullest potential. As an on-field DPS that has similar characteristics to Xiao, Cyno joins the meta as an electro hypercarry that specializes in dealing sustained damage while in its elemental burst state, Pax 1 Path Clear. In this state, he converts his normal attack damage to electro, gains elemental mastery, electro charge resistance, and a new normal attack motion values that are not tied to his normal attack talent, which means leveling up the normal attack talent is not required in order to gain more damage. His elemental skill has two cooldowns depending on if it is cast outside or inside of his elemental burst state. Casting his skill outside of his burst lunges Cyno into the enemy, putting his skill on a 7.5 second cooldown, while casting his skill inside of his burst deals AoE electro damage, putting his skill on a shorter 3 second cooldown instead. Casting an elemental skill before casting elemental burst allows him to pre-funnel, absorbing his own elemental skill particles during his burst animation, allowing him to gain energy at specific frames. This also brings no problem to his rotation, as his elemental skill cooldown outside of his burst will decrease by 4.5 seconds when he casts his elemental burst, allowing him to recast his elemental skill shortly after bursting. However, he relies on a specific combo in order to take advantage of his Ascension 1 passive timing, which increases the damage of his elemental skill and provides 3 Duststalker bolts when Enseer appears on the screen. Enseer is the eye that appears when his Ascension 1 passive is ready to be used, and its timing is quite inconsistent as it is tied to specific intervals rather than aligned with any of Cyno's cooldowns, and hit lag delaying Cyno's combo makes lining up Enseer with the skill quite hit or miss. Cyno's Ascension 4 passive, however, is pretty straightforward. It converts his elemental mastery to a flat attack damage buff for his normal attacks during the Pax 1 Path Clear state, and for the Duststalker bolts on his Ascension 1. We can compare him to Raiden, who has a similar playstyle and team composition such as Hyper, Overrape, and Hyperbloom. Cyno will require more field time as he needs to utilize everything he has in his kit, and that brings more negative values than positive values. This plays into his extended rotation time, higher team energy requirements, and working around buff uptimes that limit how long he can stay in his elemental burst state. Another electro unit we can compare Cyno with is Keqing, the standard electro 5-star character. With Keqing being obtainable on the standard banner while also having similar playstyles to Cyno, and also being able to play quick swap, her value compared to him is much stronger. Her damage is quite comparable to him while also having minimal field time, shorter rotation length, and synergizes with certain units and the buffs they provide for her compared to Cyno's options. Currently, he has limited options in terms of which party members that can work with him and provide him buffs. With the recent addition of Dendro, he can use Aggravate as his main source of buffs and focus on party members that benefited him in other ways such as energy, comfort, and red shred. Let's talk about artifact sets. Cyno's short cooldown and Electro Vision makes the 4-piece Thundering Fury set an excellent choice to reduce his skill cooldown even further. However, he can still be played with other artifact sets. This will also reduce Cyno's energy recharge requirement due to Thundering Fury, allowing him to cast more elemental skills and generate more particles. It is optimal that Cyno will leave the field after casting his 3rd Enseer proc to shorten his team's rotation time and to recast buffs that have expired. Cyno's combos will change depending on which artifact sets he is using. With Thundering Fury, this combo allows Cyno to cast his elemental skill 6 times and proc Enseer 3 times, lining up perfectly well with 4-piece Thundering Fury procs, which are enough to shorten his long field time and allow for a perfect Thundering Fury combo. With other non-Thundering Fury sets, he uses a different combo casting his skill 4 times. This is perfectly aligned with all of his cooldowns while allowing 3 Enseer to proc in the same time frame as the 4-piece Thundering Fury set combo. At Constellation 1, his combo will change as the Constellation provides 20% attack speed for Cyno, which throws off the timing for his Enseer procs. Because Cyno's rotations are specific to a certain amount of attack speed, which is quite inconsistent when you also consider hit lag, Cyno's combo at Constellation 1 still needs further testing. With Cyno's playstyle being an electro hypercarry, his team compositions are quite straightforward. First and foremost are Aggravate Teams, which are Cyno's best performing team to allow his playstyle to shine through. Usually these are played with an Electro, a Dendro, a Flex unit, and an Anemo. However, Cyno's options for this team composition are limited. The Dendro slot is currently tied to both Nahida and Dendro Traveler. Both units are able to keep up with Cyno's long field time while providing an elemental mastery buff to boost Cyno's Ascension 4 passive and aggravate damage. Fischl provides good damage, triggering Aggravate, and acts as a battery to help reduce Cyno's energy recharge requirement so he can focus on finding his other desirable substats, making her the ideal unit for the Select slot. Other alternatives for this slot are Kuki Shinobu, Dori, Beidou, and Kole. Shinobu provides heals in exchange for personal damage, and she can also carry a Favonius sword to act as a battery, especially at Constellation 4. Dori is only a reasonable choice when she is Constellation 4 or above to help mitigate Cyno's energy recharge requirement while also providing heals. She can carry Favonius Greatsword to provide more energy to Cyno, but she is locked to a small circle that constrains Cyno's movement. Beidou provides shielding and electro-resistant shred with her Constellation 6. However, she will need significant energy recharge to fund her 80 cost elemental burst. Lastly, Kole can provide more Dendro applications and activate Dendro resonance when no other options are available. For the last slot, Zhongli is your first choice. He alleviates two of Cyno's weaknesses: his vulnerability to combo interruptions in the Pax-Horn Path Clear state, and his reliance on long buffs with Zhongli's resistance shred lasting for 20 seconds. Animal units are optional if Zhongli is not available, but buffs such as Kazuha's Ascension 4 passive are preferred, while Viridescent Venerable Resistance Shred would not reach Cyno's whole rotation due to it lasting only for 10 seconds and the artifact set not working off-field. The second team we would like to mention for Cyno are Hyperbloom Teams. This team composition has 3 slots locked in: Electro, Dendro, and Hydro. The last slot is based on reaction ownership. Nahida, Dendro Traveler, and Kole are options for the Dendro slot due to their Dendro application rate off-field. The Hydro slot is for an off-field source of application for Cyno's elemental burst to trigger Bloom off of. Kokomi, Xingqiu, and Barbara are all options to consider for the Hydro slot. The Flex slot can be used to address Cyno's other problems. A battery such as Fischl helps Cyno cast his elemental burst more consistently without stealing reaction ownership due to Oz prioritizing the target first before the Bloom seeds. This team composition also features a unique interaction: Quicken and Bloom triggering simultaneously, which we will call Quickbloom. Quickbloom allows Cyno to proc both Aggravate and Hyperbloom when you use a Hydro unit with slow applications such as Barbara, which provides more damage overall. As for gear, it will be based on whether he is played in a reaction damage team or a raw talent damage team. Transformative damage team mostly composed of Hyperbloom or Overvape for Cyno, as these two team compositions brings out the fullest potential in gearing. For a talent damage team, Aggravate is mandatory as it gives him a reaction buff that works well with his kit. His weapons and artifact options are pretty solid. The 3-star weapon, White Tassel, is an effective free-to-play option, and as mentioned before, Thundering Fury is an outstanding choice. For an Aggravate team, an Elemental Mastery timepiece is recommended due to Cyno's Ascension 4 passive and the reaction scaling of Elemental Mastery to increase its damage. However, an attack percent timepiece is not much worse and can perform better than the Elemental Mastery timepiece if its substats such as crit rate percent and crit damage percent with Elemental Mastery are better. Cyno's Goblet is definitely electro damage percent, as nothing else is nearly as effective. For a circlet, crit rate percent or crit damage percent is a must. Which one is preferred will depend on the ratio of crit rate to crit damage that the rest of Cyno's gear provides. For substats, prioritize energy recharge first until his energy recharge requirement for your team of choice is reached. Then proceed to look for crit rate percent and crit damage percent, and finally Elemental Mastery and attack percent subs. For a transformative reaction team that Cyno has significant reaction ownership in, he would want a triple elemental mastery build to maximize the transformative damage while not neglecting his other substats, due to his Ascension 4 passive. The only caveat of this gear option is that triple elemental mastery on a specific artifact set is quite hard to achieve with a good amount of useful substats, as elemental mastery is the rarest main stat. For substats, energy recharge again will be the priority until energy recharge requirement is reached, then elemental mastery would be secondary. Crit rate percent and crit damage percent are optional in this gearing option. Constellations. When considering pulling for Constellations, do note that Primogems are limited resources. Cyno's Constellations are quite good for him, but remember that the pities required to get these Constellations can instead be used on future character banners. For his Constellations, the recommended stopping point is at Constellation 2 due to it providing the second biggest damage increase. This constellation provides a 10% electro damage increase that stacks up to 4 times, giving Cyno a huge damage increase over Constellation 0. Constellation 1 gives Cyno 20% attack speed buff when casting Elemental Burst and when triggering End Sears with his Elemental skill. This provides more normal attacks for him, but forces him on a new combo for both non-Thundering Fury and Thundering Fury artifact sets. Constellation 4 helps energy-hungry team compositions by providing 3 elemental energy that is stacked up to 5 times. This constellation allows Cyno to play as a battery of his supports, lowering their energy recharge requirement and removing one of the team composition problems hypercarry teams face, which is them casting only one elemental skill at most to make way for Cyno's long field time. Lastly, his Constellation 6 provides the biggest damage increase out of all his constellations. Constellation 6 gives him 4 stacks of Day of the Jackal effect when he uses his elemental burst or triggers the Ascension 1 passive. The Day of the Jackal effect provides extra Duststalker bolts that are tied to his normal attack rather than his elemental skill, and he can achieve 4 Duststalker bolts in one normal attack string with a 0.8 second occurrence before getting 4 more stacks. Overall, investing in his constellations is one's decision. With Dendro being relatively new, better Dendro units will likely soon come and potentially benefit Cyno more than his constellations. Nevertheless, one's Primogems is up to them to decide on where it will all go in the game. Should you roll? In conclusion, Cyno's pull value is mostly dependent on if you enjoy his playstyle or his design. Since the metagame is dominated by fast clearing DPS units such as the Raiden Shogun, it is quite difficult to recommend Cyno. He is roughly similar in performance to units like Xiao, Eula, and Ito, which is in the middle of the pack. He performs his intended fantasy adequately but not spectacularly, and Keqing having the same or higher positions than him while having minimal field time and a shorter rotation length. Cyno is capable of providing solid damage while still being flexible. Since Dendro still lacks units to choose from, we would recommend waiting for more information on more Dendro units before wishing on Cyno. Reruns have become more frequent, and on his second rerun, Cyno's value will rise with new Dendro units being better suited for him. Follow Keqing Mains to uncover more Cyno secrets. Thank you for watching this quick overview of the Keqing Mains Theorycrafting staff's thoughts on Cyno. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and we will do our best to answer.